Now, this viewer asked or said, you explain how to use analogous colors. Now, that was in Quick Tip 261 if you want to watch that one, because it's a really, really good one to watch before you watch this one. Anyway, she says, you explain how to use analogous colors, and I've already applied to 2 paintings. I'm really happy with the result. Good. Can you explain how to use the less intuitive tetrad, especially the one where the 4 colors are evenly spaced? It seems they are just randomly unharmonious colors. Well, let's just see about that. Okay, I explained in Quick Tip 261 about the color schemes, that there are 12 that are traditional color schemes, and what that means is we select a limited number of colors or a certain relationship of colors. We put those on our palette, and those are the colors we use for the entire painting. So, but this person asked about the tetrad scheme. So let's just look at how that works. Now, she said it seemed unharmonious. Well, let me just show you. Got a little gizmo set up here for you. And what the tetrad scheme means is that you're going to choose 4 colors that have some kind of relationship to each other on the color wheel. All right, so I've set up this little thing because this is a good way for you to see, for you to locate your tetrad scheme. And so if we have the tetrad scheme that has equal distance between each of the colors we choose, which is really the traditional tetrad scheme. So here's what we could do. You can just cut out the center of the color wheel and then cut out a little square, and then you can sort of rotate it with each corner is going to indicate the color that you choose. So for example, I've got it set here. So the scheme of colors for this particular tetrad scheme would be yellow, orange, green, pointing there, blue, violet, and red. Now if you'll notice, there are 2 colors between each one of those, 2 between red and blue, violet, and between green and blue, and so on. Green and blue, violet, I'm sorry. So that's one scheme. So why would you do this? Well, it's a good way to actually get color harmony, because within every tetrad set of colors you have, you're going to have all the colors, but they're going to be leaning in a relationship to each other. So let's just find another one, and we'll just kind of randomly select. What about that one? Okay, that scheme. If you look, what really happens in a tetrad scheme is you will have 2 sets of complements. And in this case, we've got yellow and violet, and we've got red, orange, and blue, green. Well, look, every color, every primary color, or really actually every color that is in our circle of colors appears in some relationship. So we've got yellow here, we've got red, orange here, so red gets introduced plus yellow. We've got violet here, so that introduces blue, and then we've got blue-green here, so we have blue both in violet and in blue-green, and blue-green of course includes yellow. See how that works? So you have all the colors, so they can easily be compiled into a scheme that works. So, but why would you want to use that? You'd want to use it because you want to learn about color, and you might just be surprised at how satisfied you'd be with choosing a scheme like this and interpreting any scene or reference that you have. So let me just show you how you might go about that. Now, one way to do this, not the only way, one way you do it is just make a random decision, because if you have your values right in a realistic painting, you can use any color you want to, any color combination, as long as the values match or values are right, because the values are created by how the light is hitting the source and the shadows it creates, and so it doesn't matter what colors you choose. But if you want them to have some harmony, or want them to have an interesting relationship, be maybe just a little bit different from what your eyes are actually picking up, here's one way you can go about doing that. I have a bit of a scene here. Choose the color in that scene that you see most of. We call that the dominant color. That's one way, or you could choose another. You could choose a color that we see least of. But the point is, you choose one color, only one color from the scheme, And chances are that will be the only color that you'll actually be matching or interpreting, and the other colors will fall into place in harmony. Let me show you how. So we look at these cows. What hue do we see? And I would say the hue we're seeing is more in the orange range. I'll say, okay, so here's what we would do. We would put 1 point of our square on orange. Now that gives us, let's get this set. I don't think my square is not quite square, the circle's not quite round, one or the other, but it works. So, so this gives us a scheme then. We would choose for our colors that go on our palette. We'd choose orange, we'd choose yellow green, we'd choose blue, and we would choose red violet. But we don't just choose one value of those colors, we'll need a full value range of each of those hues. So I'm just going to give you a little bit of a guidance here to show you how we can work that, and also show you how we can then, from these colors, or from this set of colors, we can really find the other colors that we need. So, orange. First of all, I have on my palette, orange that comes out of the tube. One orange is cadmium orange. Now, we know that orange can range towards yellow, or lean towards yellow, or lean towards red orange, but we don't have to be real picky about that. Let's just keep it simple. So orange, cadmium orange. All right, I have cadmium orange right here, but it's a very light color and it's a very high intensity color. Well, that doesn't matter so much as the value. So that means I need to find an orange in a tube color that is going to be a really dark orange. So I could choose burnt sienna. That is a kind of, well, it depends on what brand you have, but it does fall in the orange range. That would be one. I could choose quinacridone burnt orange. That's a nice orange. I could choose a Rembrandt transparent oxide red. That one kind of leads to orange. So what happens when they get very, very dark? They lose a lot of their hue anyway. So you can kind of fudge it a little bit as far as the dark color. Now I've chosen here the Rembrandt transparent red oxide, and so what you would do then you would use this as wherever your darkest oranges are going to appear, and then where the lighter oranges appear, you use this. Now what I like to do, is to do a value line. I'm not going to do a complete one, but what I'll do here is just to select or to create a middle value of those two, and kind of show you how that works. So it makes it a little bit easier. So here we go. Now just pull those two together, and now we get, or we will in just a moment, I will have a almost a middle value of those two mixtures, and that will give me, as far as mixing goes, that will give me a range. This is still very close to that, so I need it sort of in the middle of those two. That will give me a range of values that we could call orange, dark orange to a little bit lighter orange to a little bit lighter orange, and then on this side I can just add white to that, some, and the white of course is going to subtract some of the yellow out of it. It always does on those warmer colors. The white always subtracts a little yellow out of it, but if it works, you can use that just like that, and so not worry about that when you're using this particular schema. You'll see that in just a moment, I hope. Alright, so let's get this one a little bit more. You see, that orange is very strong, and so it's there we go. That's close enough. So I've got a value set that belongs to the dark side or the shadow side, a value set that belongs to the light side or the shadow, not in the shadow side, and so on. And these, of course, can be mixed. So there we go. There are the oranges. Now, the complement of orange is blue, and because blue is one of the colors that we find in the tetrad. Now, the blue we would handle a little bit different because, well, if you have a very light blue in the tube, you might choose it. But be careful about the blue that you choose. You don't want to choose a blue that has too much yellow in it, so you wouldn't want to choose something like phthalo blue that has too much yellow, and that will just turn the orange, lean the orange more towards green. So it would be better to choose something like ultramarine blue that has a little bit of the red in it, and so does orange, so that should be all right. So I'm thinking either ultramarine blue for your darkest dark, because it is darker than cobalt blue. You could use cobalt blue, but either one of those. And so I'm just going to use ultramarine. Now, to lighten that, all I need to do is add some white. So we'll do that, and let's try to get this pretty much in the same value range. There we go. That's close to the same value range as that. But then on the light part, white again, because in the cooler colors we don't get the chalkiness. Well, not always, but less likely to get the chalkiness that we'll get if we just added white to this. We would have it would get more and more chalky as the lighter it got. So just a little bit of the white, just using white to do the value gradation of the blue. So that means also that with every tetrad scheme you would use, you would also use white. Now white's not considered a color because it has no color in it unless it's warm or whatever. We don't need to get into that kind of debate. But we use it to create light, or to be a lightener for other colors. So let's put a little bit more of that. Now we've got that range. Now then we go to the other set, yellow-green. Okay, yellow-green, we do have available to us some yellow-greens in a very, very dark. Usually those darks, the darker end of a hue, and it comes out of a tube, is going to be transparent. The more transparent it is, the more capable it is of creating a dark. So I'm using the sap green. This is the Daniel Smith sap green, which is my very favorite sap green. You could also mix the sap green, but I don't want to go into that right now. So, but on the light side, you might not have this in your arsenal, but if you don't, you might consider adding it if you use a lot of greens, just for the fun of it. But you can make it too. This is just simply called yellow-green. It used to be called phthalo yellow-green, and some companies might still call it that. It's a very light, high-intensity green. But you could use phthalo green and add yellow into it, or you could use viridian and add yellow to it and get that yellow-green. But this, I'm just going to use this to keep it simple. So we're going to use just a little bit of the yellow-green here mixed with the sap green, and then that gives us the darker version. Then we'll go on the other side, and the same thing. I'm going to do the same thing with the yellow-green as I did with the blue. I'm going to just add white to get a lighter version. So let me see just a little bit jump in value. The yellow-green is a bit darker than the cadmium orange, but okay, now we took it too far. It's always better when you're mixing it very light like that to start out with a white and add the other color to it. Okay, that's good. Now, and then the other color, the partner you might call it with a red-violet, with the yellow-green is the red-violet. Here's another one that you can mix with ultramarine blue and either alizarin crimson or well, any of those transparent reds. You could use with ultramarine blue, and you can come up with a red-violet. Probably the alizarin crimson would be your best bet. So I'm not going to go into all the others now. But I'm not using alizarin crimson here. I'm using another one. It's called quinacridone violet. Let me see. Right here. And that's because it's just a wonderful red-violet. You could also, I think there's magenta is another one that you could use. Alright, so I'm going to do the same thing with this one. We'll just add a little white to get that darker version right here. Now this is just a way to, whoops, that was too much. This is just a way to set up your palette, to get your palette set up so that you can make those this scheme work for you in a logical way. You know, if you set it up as a scientific piece to begin with, be scientific with your color while you're using it, and wait until you learn what it will do before you try to be expressive with it. It's a good, not a bad way to go. All right, so I got that too dark here. I'm talking and not watching what I'm doing. All right, that's probably close enough. So just getting it a little lighter, so we can have it lighter on that side, on this side, and darker over here, just to show what they will do. A little bit more here. There we go. That's good enough right there. Now how do you mix those? What can you make? happen. I'm not going to we're not going to take the time. This would stretch a quick tip out to about an hour if we did an entire painting of this, but I just want to show you the colors that you can get. All right, so we can intermix these now to change the colors or lean the colors in one direction or another. So let's just look at if you look at the dark part right in here, the dark or shadow parts of the cow, and you can take a little bit of that the darker orange, add a little bit of the blue to it. That it kind of cools it a little bit, like shadows happen. And let's see, maybe just get just a little bit lighter and a little bit cooler. Let's go back here and straddle those two just a little bit. And you can get very much, let's see, I'm just going to do just this much. You can see how you can find these shadow colors just by mixing those two. In some cases those might lean a little bit more towards violet, so you can just add a little bit of violet to that if it does lean a little bit more towards violet. And let's see, so that would give you something like this. So you see you can intermix with those darker values and you'll find every color you see here just by the nature of what that does. And in the light side of that, with the brush rinsed off really good here so that we can have a pure brush to use. In the light side of that, now if we look in this area of the oranges, we could go right over in here and then see. Now if we have that area of the orange, we see that if you can compare with some of my brush, you see how that's just a little, it's not exactly orange, but it looks a little pinker. Well, we can go down in here into the same value area. It feels a little pinker, so the violet has red in it. That tells you a little pinker. Alright, now so I'm going to walk you through this now, how to think about it. So let's hold the brush up there, and that's closer, but it seems to me maybe just be a little bit duller than that, so we can move just a just a touch of that, the complement of red violet, and that reduces the intensity. Get a little bit more of the orange in there. That will help reduce the intensity just enough so that, look at that, there we are right there. So for reducing the intensity, we go for a complementary relationship. We can use any of these three to reduce the intensity of the orange because every one of these has blue in them. So we want to reduce the intensity of the orange. We can do it directly by using just the blue, but that might not give us exactly the hue we need. So we might try the next, go here, the next color, or the analogous color, relatively analogous color to orange is red violet, because it has the red in it, but it also has that, the yellow and the violet in it, which would help reduce the intensity. The green has yellow in it, which orange has in it, and it also has blue in it, which is a complement of orange. So you see how this works. Regardless of which one of these you see or you use, any of the other three will have something of its complement in it. So you can see you can move up and down and back and forth depending on how you want the color to lean. Alright, so that is not the whole story there. Of course, then you can go into the darkening. You could move up into the darker version of these, and a little bit of the darker version of the green, the yellow green. And let's see here. Let's see if we can get something a little bit closer to that. What we're looking at there, to this little transition area. See there? That will give it to you. So by moving up and down the value scale, and then moving in combinations of mixtures, but thinking about it logically. So if you're in one color range, if it's giving you the value you need, but not quite the intensity, it needs to be subdued a little bit, then experiment with each one of these, or maybe combinations of those, and you can find that. So you can see now, perhaps you could see just by doing that much, how you might be able to move through this entire image You can find the image, go into pixelbay.com and just search for cows, and among all the cows it has, this one will come up if you want this particular image to play with. All right, now let's look at other colors you might want for that. You might want the greens that you're seeing, but you can see the greens are very light because they are being hit by sunlight. Okay, so the temptation might be to go for this lightest version of this really high intensity yellow green. But you see, if I put that, you see how that is really it really shows that the green leans a little bit more towards orange. So you can think about that. If you just hold your brush up to it like this, or you can get a little slip of paper and paint on the end of it, test strips. You've probably seen me do that before. But you see, okay, that tells me if I compare them, that needs a little bit more orange in it. And let's see if a little bit more orange would do it. We're in the right value range, so let's just check that out. Will a little orange do that? Oh, look at that. That's very close. Let's see, a little bit more. Is it going to need some more intensity reduction? Well, let's just put a little sample right there and see. That's pretty close. That's pretty close. Now, what you might play with for a combination like that, you might play with going in with a little bit of this red-violet, or you might play with going in a little bit of the blue and give yourself a little bit more. Aha! Look at that. When you want it a little bit cooler, if it needs to be a little bit cooler, you go into blue. But you see that grass varies. It varies in hue and intensity. So you see a little bit cooler as it goes in the distance there. If it gets a little cooler, then you could stay in the light range of the values and go into the cooler part. And so here would be a cooler version, and see that gets very close to what we're seeing right there to create the grass. And then if you're looking at stuff in the distance there, you see distant trees. They're very blurry in this photograph, but those trees fall more towards the greens and blue greens. All right, and they're very dark. Okay, so let's just go up here. I said greens and blue. So we'll take the yellow green first of all, and then we'll pull some blue into it because we said blue green. So we'll pull some blue into that yellow, and to the yellow green. And let's just reduce the intensity. We know that intensity is reduced. Whoops, it's not reduced that much, so try that again. Know the intensity is reduced, and when we know the intensity is reduced, we go for something that is the complement. Remember, I said you're going to find any of these that you're working with. You're going to find ways to reduce the intensity. All right, so I'm going to go just a little bit more for that, and let's see now. Is that a little bit cooler? Let's see. Is that going to give us what we see? And I'll just put it right here. And we see that is that's more like we're seeing right there. So it just says to me, let it talk to you. It says to me it needs a little bit more blue. It needs to be cooler, perhaps a little less intense. And look at this. There we go. That's what it needs right there. If it needs to be darker, we go into the darker version of that same combination. So we'd go into the darker blue, put a tiny bit of that, tiny bit of the red violet into it, and go back into the green. And see, we get almost black there. Look at this wonderful little, see that wonderful little contrast that you can get there by doing that. So you can see, and also you have the ability, if you have a subject, if those cows were out in the field and you could see the sky, then you can do the same sort of thing where you would start, depends on what color the sky is, but you would start with the value that you're seeing, go into the most obvious color first. So if we say blue sky, that's obvious. If that blue sky happens to feel like it has a little bit of green in it, then we can go over here and add a little bit of this, just a little bit of the yellow green into that. If it feels a little bit, if you have a little bit of purple, you can see a little purple added to the sky. You could do that, and you would come up with a nice little color. You will never want the same color all the way through for your sky anyway. So this color scheme also gives you the opportunity to move the hue. You move it a little bit more towards blue in some areas, you see, like that. Or you can move it a little bit more towards blue-green in other areas. Don't want to get that too green. In other areas, something like this. Or you could move it a little bit more towards the violet here. Now, with this particular scene, a combination, we lucked up because we actually can produce from this set of colors Almost everything that we see there pretty close to the way we see it in nature. But if you aren't able to do that, you then find the closest combination that you can in order to interpret what you're seeing, and you'll find that by doing that, your sky, or whatever color you fudged on just a little bit, is going to be really harmonious, because you'll be using the same colors that you had throughout, but you'll just be using a different combination of them. And so when you're not comparing your painting with the thing you're looking at here, it will look harmonious. It will feel like it belongs together. If you get so anal about it that you want that sky or whatever else you're seeing to be exactly the color you want to see, it's not going to work. So you got to be willing to allow those colors to lean a little bit one way or another. So if it's a blue sky you're looking at and that's what you're trying to produce, be happy with the blue sky you can get from here, or use another color scheme, because you're not going to be able to get always exactly what you're looking at. So I think it would be a good idea, while you have nothing else to do, be a good idea just to play with the tetrad scheme. And you can find all kinds of references if you happen to be in a situation where you don't have a lot of references outside your window, or you could set up still life. That works too. But go on pixabay.com, and lots of free references there that you can just practice with. And you practice finding different tetrad combinations and combining those in the way I've shown you here. I think you'll have fun with that. Be sure and view all of our quick tips. And while you're doing so, subscribe to the channel, click on the bell, so you'll always get a notice when we produce a new quick tip, which is every week. And if you have a question, leave it in the comments section and we'll make a quick tip for you. Also, take a trip over to dyingminds.com, where I have full-length lessons, downloads, DVDs, lots of other stuff there, some free stuff for you. And while you're there, you can subscribe to the newsletter, and that way you'll always be informed every time we do something new.